Breaking news here on SportsCenter, the Boston Celtics, they're busy. They traded guard Avery Bradley to the Pistons for forward Marcus Morris, according to league sources, telling our Adrian Wojnarowski Bradley averaged over 16 points per game, 6 rebounds last season. The Celtics have been aggressively trying to create enough salary cap room to give Gordon Hayward the 4-year, $128 million maximum contract he agreed to on Tuesday. Bradley spent his first 7 seasons in the NBA, all with the Celtics. He posted career highs in points per game, rebounds per game, and assists per game. Although he played just 55 games, his fewest since 2012-2013. And Wojo joins us now. And let me tell Adrian, how did this come about?
Linda, Boston, since they got the commitment from Gordon Hayward on free agency, they've had to create some salary cap space to sign him to a max deal. And in doing that, they were out shopping Avery Bradley, Marcus Smart, and Jay Crowder. They closed in here in the last several hours on a deal with the Pistons, which the Boston sends out Bradley and a second-round pick for Marcus Morris. For the Celtics, it gives them the ability now to sign Hayward into their salary cap space, and Detroit gets a tremendous two-way player in Avery Bradley, who I think going forward was going to be difficult for the Celtics to pay him his market value, which could be as much as $20 million a year.
You know, let's talk about Detroit a little bit. So how does Bradley fit in with them? I mean, where do they go from here to here? Or, I mean, how will that work with their roster?
He is perfect. I mean, Stan Van Gundy has been looking for that tough-minded two-way player at the guard position. He can score the ball. He defends. He's an elite defender at his position. And it gives them now an option. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who's a restricted free agent, he could potentially go out and get a max offer sheet from a team like Otto Porter did in Washington. Detroit has been very reluctant to pay him that kind of money, and it gives Detroit now the flexibility to maybe not have to keep Caldwell-Pope. They could work on a sign and trade with another team and get some assets back for him, but now they have an alternative here if they don't go forward with him. You know, Avery Bradley's a player who I think the Pistons are going to be very aggressive in trying to extend long term.
Back to Boston, Wojo. Is this it for Danny Ainge for now?
Well, this was a major piece. They had to get this done here in the last 24 hours to get the Hayward agreement signed. Boston still needs some more size up front, some more strength. They need to be able to rebound and defend the rim better, and I think that's something Boston now will be able to address here between now and the start of training camp.
All right, Adrian Wojnarowski, who broke this story. Avery Bradley, now a Detroit Piston. Let's talk more about it. We welcome in our NBA analyst, Ryan Russillo, and, of course, the writer for The Undefeated, none other than Mike Wise. And, Ryan, I'm going to start with you. When you first heard about this, that Wojo broke this story, what came to mind?
A bunch of different things. We knew that the restrictions on the salary for Boston is something they're going to have to work with, and Avery Bradley's $8 million this year, so bringing in Morris, they save some money because he's $5 million for this year and next. So there's a cheaper alternative there. Jay Crowder, to keep him, is a cheaper alternative. He's under contract, so Bradley was going to become really expensive, not just this year, but next year when he becomes a free agent. On the other side for Detroit, their salary sheet is a mess. They're paying a lot of guys that aren't that good a lot of money, and they're worried about Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. So now this means, as a restricted free agent for Pope, if he was offered a major deal from someone else, then they might not necessarily care about it now because they have somebody like Bradley who'd be part of their future.
Well, I was going to say, Gordon Hayward better be good. I mean, he better be very good, because of all the guys I didn't want to see them lose if I were the Celtics.
It was him, Bradley?
It was him. I would have rather seen Marcus Smart go. And Crowder, I don't know, he would have been a tough go, but Avery Bradley is that skill player that's developed year after year. He's gotten better year after year, and I understand you have to make tough decisions. You're not going to be able to pay him in a year. Both he and Isaiah Thomas come up next year. So, look, I think it's going to be a huge addition. I feel like the Celtics are, were gritty enough, but Marcus Morris only makes them grittier. I think he's played 79, 81, 82 games the last 3 years, hasn't had an injury problem, 14 points a game last 2 seasons, 5 rebounds. I mean, this is a good pickup for them. You're right. They needed someone to take the load off Al Horford down low a little bit. But I hate losing Avery Bradley.
What do you think?
That's why I'd be a lousy
court?
GM, because I'd hold on to players that I shouldn't.
I know, right?
So,
you couldn't work in this world of the NBA. Ryan, so how do they look on the court now, the Boston Celtics?
Well, they have wing depth that, even though I agree with Mike and how much you like Avery Bradley because of his defense, they'll be able to get by without this.
Smart plays great defense, though.
Oh, Smart's terrific. Smart is one of the best small guards that defends bigger players. What he does to some of these guys that are much bigger than him in the post, it's embarrassing for the Smart just owns him. But offensively, he's not necessarily Bradley, and Bradley was still a little inconsistent at times. But now we're talking about that front line, as Woj just mentioned. The Celtics still need size because the Horford-Morris pairing, rebounding-wise, that's not a good group. So now we're looking at a team that was the worst rebounding team in the playoffs going into last year. So, look, free agency isn't over yet. Like, they don't have to worry about the playoffs next week. So we'll see what the next move is there to try to add somebody that has more of a rebounding background. But it makes sense with Morris because of the offense and the fact that his salary is cheaper than Bradley. This is all about how expensive Bradley would have been next year than what happened today.
Yeah, and this is all about getting Gordon Hayward in, make sure he's in the fray, and you don't have to worry about him. And then you can, like, as you said, go after the next guy.
You know who else doesn't have to worry about the playoffs actually for quite some time? I believe the New York Knicks. That's right. I'm sorry. I'm a Knicks fan, and I'm like, what? I thought we were rebuilding. What gives, Ryan? Tim Hardaway Jr., 4 years, $71 million? What happened? What's going on with Steve Mills here? Is Phil Jackson calling him up from a foreign place? Why make this deal?
Phil traded this guy, so maybe Steve wanted him back.
Steve's favorites.
Here's the problem with restricted free agency, okay? You have to construct a contract that's so bad that the team that has the player,
you like
right?
that?
Holy sheet.
Yes.
Yeah, that you have to discourage the team from wanting to match that contract. And the reward of that is then now you get the player with the bad contract. So
Atlanta's not matching this.
Yeah,
no way, right?
Probably not. But look, nobody in Washington thought that Otto Porter was going to get a deal offered for $106 million. So here's the deal. I don't think there is any real true free agency. It's the value of that player to that team. I mean, if Kirk Cousins, was on the market right now, and I guess he kind of is, but he will be next year, the New England Patriots would have nothing to do with him because they've already got a quarterback. Right. It depends on it depends on what you need.
But don't the Knicks already have Courtney Lee, who plays the same position as Tim Hardaway Jr.?
Yeah, and they're paying him a good chunk. The problem with this is where the J.J. Redick thing works out. You go, okay, I'm going to pay you an absurd amount of money for 1 year, and Redick's a better player than Tim Hardaway Jr.
Yes.
And then we can figure this out. So if you were so desperate for Tim Hardaway Jr., it's about discouraging and restricted free agency. We cannot say that enough because here's how restricted free agency usually works. You talk to a team. They scream up and down about the other team that gave their restricted free agent the offer. They say how stupid the offer is. Then the team matches it, and they keep him. All right? So I don't think he's going to get matched, but that's what happens. Like the league, they're just, I can't believe the other team did this. That's so stupid. They offer him way too much money. I'm like, yeah, you just matched it, though. And they're like, yeah, we know. We had to keep the guy. So
it's an insane system. I feel like the Knicks, they almost had to make some news that wasn't negative, and you're running out of players at this point.
Yeah.
You're running out, and you're figuring what you're going to do with the cap room. You don't know what you're going to do with Carmelo Anthony yet, and you have to do something to make people in New York go, hey, wait, the Knicks did something.
No, I think half of them are saying, what did the Knicks just do? I mean, more than half. They're in shock like myself. All right, Carmelo Anthony, we wait. We know about Adrian Wojnarowski's report that he's open, Melo is, to lifting his no trade to Houston or Cleveland. I know we ask you about this daily. What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, by the way, I just want to say it's about time Woj started putting his dues in here and putting it,
Yeah,
what has he done?
Really, not much.
Picked it up.
Yeah,
right. Ryan, really, I mean,
the people that I talked to on this one, the Houston trade idea is something that would work better for Melo, whereas Cleveland, I think, is really hoping that he still is bought out. I think Cleveland would like to take Melo and bring him into the group that is already there. They could dump some of the contracts, but they don't want to move a Tristan Thompson. They don't want to move a Kevin Love for him. They want to add Melo to what they have out there now. Houston, the problem there is the contracts they'd be sending out, all the different variations that I've seen of this trade are all long-term deals. And we thought prior to the Tim Hardaway offer sheet that the Knicks were not interested in longer-term deals. Ryan Anderson is owed a ton of money. Eric Gordon was terrific last year, but Eric Gordon was terrific in Houston's system. Okay, so when you bring in Eric Gordon to the Knicks, he's not the Eric Gordon that you saw with the Rockets where it's wide-open shots all over the place. So those are not things I would still think, post this Hardaway Jr. news, that the Knicks would not be interested in taking on all that salary just to move Melo out.
in discussions with somebody in the Knicks organization, they haven't heard anything literally about that. Carmelo has, in fact, waived his no-trade clause. It's only been media reports to them. So this is sort of, okay, just like a team waiting for an offer sheet to see if this is actually a true figure. They want to hear from Carmelo Anthony. I still think much of this happens after they meet with David Griffin, former Cleveland Cavaliers GM, and they get somebody in that team president thing, because I don't know if James Dolan, as much as he has a great relationship with Steve Mills, is comfortable with him making all these moves at this point.
Yeah, I'll tell you. It's a soap opera.
Linda's not hiding it today.
I'm not. I can't help it. I'm just.
This is tough love from you, though.
I represent, like, I'd say 98% of Knicks fans the way I feel today. Ryan and Mike, we'll hear from you later. Thanks so much. Tony.
Linda.
Well, 4 of the top 15 win share leaders from last season have inked deals with Western Conference teams. Jimmy Butler heads west, part of that draft day trade with the Timberwolves. The Warriors re-signed their 2 stars and more. And don't forget about Paul George, how could we, who will join forces with the reigning MVP. On the other hand, only 1 of the top 15 win share leaders went west to east, with Gordon Hayward joining the Celtics. J.J. Redick will be making $23 million next season with the Sixers, and Kelly Olynyk is heading to Miami. And for more, we welcome in our NBA brass of Ryan Russillo, Mike Wise, and Tom Habistro. And Tom, I'll start with you. Put into context for us the disparity that now exists between the 2 conferences in terms of the top players.
It's crazy, the imbalance between the 2 conferences. You could look at Jimmy Butler just got traded to the Western Conference. You look at Paul George to OKC and Paul Millsap signing with Denver. That's 25% of the All-Star team in the East last year going to the West. And if you look elsewhere, I mean, all the other all-NBA teams are littered with Western Conference players. And you look at the all-defensive team last year, 10 guys, only 1 of them was from the Eastern Conference last year, Giannis Antetokounmpo. So the Western Conference is absolutely stacked, and with those 3 deals, Paul Millsap, Paul George, and Jimmy Butler, that is an incredible lopsided conference.
Ryan.
I was expecting at some point, Tom, and I know we've talked about this. I mean, this was a concern, the East versus West 10 years ago, and you go, it's cyclical, it'll figure out. It's getting worse.
Yes.
Now I'm just wondering, is it just these teams loading up? I mean, it's not like Jimmy Butler went to L.A. I mean, he ended up getting traded to Minnesota with a coach that was already there, so it can't just be location here.
I don't, I love Tom's article, but I thought he completely disrespected some of the great stars in the Eastern Conference. Now, Ryan had talked last hour about...
I sense sarcasm.
No, but I mean, he said you want to put these 2 teams together on a court, and you say, who's going to win the playground game, all right? So I'm going to not play by the position game. I'm going to take DeMar DeRozan, John Wall, Kyrie Irving, Isaiah Thomas, and LeBron James. You're telling me that team, Tom, is not going to break down all your West stars?
All right, well, let's get into the actual article, first of all. I mean, if you look at the 2... Are you
saying I misread it correctly?
No, I'm not. Yeah. I would never, ever think you wouldn't read correctly there, Mike. I know you. You're one of the best out there. Best readers ever. So I was looking at the...
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
I was looking at the star power of the Western Conference, and they go 2 teams deep. I mean, you're looking at a starting lineup of Damian Lillard, Klay Thompson, Paul Millsap, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, Rudy Gobert. You take your pick. It's going to be just as good as the Eastern Conference All-Star team, and if you actually look at the number of wins above replacement, it's a player value metric using ESPN's Real Plus Minus. If you look at like an all-in-one metric and total them all up, the Western Conference actually has more player value than the Eastern Conference. The B team, the second set of 12 best players, actually has better value than the first
Billy
team.
Bean. I mean,
you buy that the second team in the West can beat the #1 team in the East?
No, I don't believe that at all. And Ryan and I, we celebrate the game. We don't calibrate it. Okay, so stop it already, Haber.
Well, see, talking about how good the Western Conference is, not celebrating how good the league is.
No, I'm just saying, you make like Gordon Hayward's out to be a defector or something, like he's gone to some country that he's been quarantined. I mean, he went to a decent franchise.
Look, when you look at those, though, B Team West, A Team, like, he's not wrong. The toughest thing for that article for the East, Tom, is that you have Lowry as the 12th best player in the NBA and the second best player in the East. So, like, some people are going to read that part of it and go, well, man, the East is screwed. if we're talking Lowry is the 12th best player.
And also Horford being like off your bench in the All-Star game. I like Al Horford. Yeah, that was.
You know what I love that what you said, Tom. You said it on SportsCenter a few days ago. Just get rid of the conferences and make it 1 through 16, right? I mean, no East, no West. We get the best ball come the postseason, best teams in the postseason.
I don't like things like that, but
Why
this
not?
has gone on for so long. Because I just think that if we did that all the time, then every 3 years people would get upset and be like, why do we have NFL divisions? Why don't we just move everyone to Tokyo? You know? It's just like, well,
Ryan, there's a lot of GMs out there who agree with you that say, why do we keep like re-changing the rules every year based on what happened the previous year? But
this is too long.
Adam Silver was talking about this 2 years ago.
Yeah,
like, this wasn't something just new.
No, you're
this
right.
has been going on for years.
Yeah, I mean, that was the point of what I was like. This is the one where I go, this has gone on for so long.
Well, part of this is sarcasm, but look, these are still players, and these are still decent teams. I understand the star power is West. Maybe Adam Silver's got to address that at some point. But Tom acts like, you know, that this is essentially the Eastern Conference is now you just need to contract it, put Cleveland in the West, and make the rest an expansion draft.
Mike is on a mission, Tom. He plans to bury you in your analytics.
I mean, I never said that it's Siberia or anything like that, Mike. You're putting words in my mouth, but
I probably am.
What I'm trying to say is, like, you look at all NBA, you look at all defensive team, you look at all the All-Star rosters. I mean, there is no argument that the Western Conference is vastly better, there is no argument that it isn't. I mean, I just think when you put it into terms of there are two teams at the very least as good as the very best team in the Eastern Conference. Is that fair?
We got it. Well said. We'll leave it there. Tom, thank you, of course, and Ryan and Mike, good debate as always. Fun talking about this stuff. Thanks. Tony.